I pick up my granddaughter from school. She gets in the car, and her face is just not sad, not angry, but empty, like something inside her went dark. She's 17. I ask, "How was your day, sweetheart?" She shrugs. I ask, "Did someone hurt you?" She says, "No." And then, after a pause, she asks me something that I still can't get out of my head. She says, "Grandpa, do you ever feel like everything you do is pointless, like nobody really cares?" My name is George. I'm 89 years old. I lived through the war as a boy, survived the post-war hunger, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the wild 90s, and personal losses I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And that question from my granddaughter hit me hard, because I've asked myself the same thing more times than I can count. The difference is, I'm at the finish line looking back, and she's just stepping up to the starting line. And somewhere in between, I think I've figured out something important. We live in a world obsessed with success. Everyone wants to leave a mark, change the world, go down in history. Young people chase careers to become somebody. They post photos online, waiting for likes as proof of their worth, measuring themselves by how many people know their name. And I get it, I really do. But here's what became clear after nearly 9 decades on this earth. What truly matters rarely feels like it matters in the moment. Let me tell you about our neighbor, Marianne. She lived in our building for 42 years. An elementary school teacher, never married, never had children of her own. She spent her entire life teaching young kids at the same school. When she retired, they gathered everyone in the assembly hall. About 30 people showed up, mostly her fellow teachers. No cameras, no big speeches, just a certificate and flowers wrapped in plastic. 2 years later, Marianne passed away quietly in her sleep. I thought hardly anyone would come to the funeral. She was a quiet, modest woman. The church was packed, and people started standing up to speak. A grown surgeon said that Marianne was the first person who believed he wasn't a troublemaker, but a smart kid. A woman who runs a foundation talked about how Marianne taught her to read when everyone else had already given up on her. A gray-haired man came with his daughter and said he became a teacher because of her and no one else. Story after story. Lives were changed because one woman thought she was simply doing her job. She wasn't trying to save the world, and she wasn't looking for recognition. She just showed up every morning, looked her students in the eyes, remembered their names, noticed who was struggling, stayed after class to explain fractions. Nothing heroic, the kind of thing newspapers never write about. But the warmth of her life is still spreading decades later. We've got it all backwards. We think that matching means being known by crowds. But life works differently. It runs on small things, on a heart-to-heart conversation that shifts the way you see the world, on a kind word spoken when someone is on the edge, on showing up when it's inconvenient, on listening when you yourself are barely holding on. When I was 41, I hit a very dark stretch in my life. Work was falling apart. There was no money, nothing to feed my family with. I started drinking heavily, barely sleeping, and felt like a complete failure. One evening, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, trying to decide whether to go home or head to the bar. And then a guy I barely knew, Tony, knocked on my window. He says, "George, I just made some tea. Come on in. We'll just sit. No lectures, no questions." We sat at his kitchen table for 2 hours. He didn't pry, didn't try to fix me. We just talked about fishing, about books, about a trip he'd taken. And somewhere in the middle of all that ordinary conversation, something inside me settled. I didn't go to the bar. I went home to my wife. I can't even remember exactly what we talked about, But that evening changed everything. He might have saved my life, and he probably forgot about it by morning. That's exactly the point. You won't get a message saying, "Congratulations, you changed someone's life." Most of the time, you'll never know. You do something good, you forget about it. But for someone else, it might be the one thing that kept them going. My wife Nancy loved writing letters, real ones, by hand, in envelopes. She wrote to the kids at college, to old friends, to family out in the countryside. I used to tease her. "Nance, just call them. It's the 21st century." She'd smile and keep writing. When she was gone, I found a box filled with the replies. And in almost every single letter, people wrote, "Nancy, thank you for your letter. I keep it and read it again when things get hard." She wasn't trying to be great. She was simply giving warmth. But the mark she left turned out to be enormous. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I was young. Your life doesn't have to be great to have meaning. The pressure to be the best, to stand out, it breaks people. It makes them think that an ordinary life is a failure, as if working honestly, loving your family, helping a stranger doesn't count unless it made the evening news. But the truth is, the world is held together by people nobody will remember. By mothers who don't sleep at night beside a sick child's bed. By men who do their work with integrity. By friends who call just to ask how you're doing. By people who don't litter in the park and give up their seat on the bus. By small acts that keep everything from falling apart. If you want to know whether your life means something, look at the people around you. Are you honest with them? Are you kind when you don't have to be? Do you keep your word? Do you see other people's pain? Do you take joy in their happiness? There's no medal for any of that, and your follower count won't go up. But that is exactly what decides whether your life was real. I thought about my granddaughter's question for a long time and realized it's a trick question. We ask, "Do I matter?" But what we really mean is, "Am I great?" But mattering is quiet and personal. It's simply knowing that without you, someone's life would be a little colder. When my grandson was 9 years old, he was terrified of water. Wouldn't go near a river. I gave a whole summer to that. Every day, standing with him at the water's edge, bit by bit. No pushing, no shaming. Just being there while he got used to it. By the end of the summer, the kid was swimming. He's 25 now. He doesn't even remember that summer. But I remember, because I know, if I hadn't been there with patience, that fear might have stayed with him his whole life. That's what matters. Not a heroic act, just being decent to one another.